What would you do if the only warmth in your life came from the steam of a stranger's breath? Mila didn't plan it, she just left the bathroom door open. The house was quiet, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that creeps into your bones. Mila had lived in the Tampa suburb for 6 years. In a sleek, 2-story home with white walls, gray marble, and large windows that let in the Florida sun. Yet somehow, the brightness never touched her skin the way it used to. Not since Thomas began taking international contracts. 4 weeks in Europe, 10 days back, then off again. He always returned with chocolates, new ties, and stories told half-heartedly over reheated dinners. Mila would listen, nod, and laugh where she was supposed to. But inside, her laughter never echoed. She was 36 now. She used to work at a spa. Her hands always warm, always soothing. Now, her days were slow drips of nothingness. Yoga classes she didn't finish. Books she didn't read. Smoothies left half-blended on the counter. Her world had become quiet, pristine, and hollow. Her marriage had become a checklist. Good morning. Did you call the contractor? Flight lands Friday. And sometimes, not even that. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't unfaithful. He was simply gone. Present in flesh but not in spirit. Their calls were like business meetings. Efficient, hollow. They covered logistics, never feelings. Mila found herself waiting for his voice the way people wait for an elevator, expecting nothing but movement. She started spending more time in front of mirrors. Not in vanity, but in search. Who was she now? A woman with clear skin, a toned body, and eyes that had stopped sparkling. She began choosing silk over cotton, red over beige, perfume over lotion. It wasn't for anyone else. It was for the ghost of herself she was trying to summon. One afternoon, she noticed a damp patch under the bathroom sink. A leak. Nothing serious, but it gave her a reason to do something. To engage with the world beyond Amazon packages and streaming shows. She could have called Thomas's preferred service. But she didn't. She opened her phone and found a local plumbing app with no reviews. No history, just a name. Mason. When she booked the appointment, she chose the earliest available time. She didn't think too hard about what she wore that day. But she didn't wear what she normally would. A silk robe, loosely tied, a camisole underneath, but barely. The day was warm, Florida warm, the kind that made glass sweat and air hum. She opened the windows slightly, letting the breeze stir the curtains. Then she turned on the shower. Not to use it, just to fog the glass. Just to hear something that wasn't silence. When the doorbell rang, her stomach fluttered. She took her time opening the door. Mason was younger than expected. Maybe early 30s. He had a sun-warmed tan. Short sleeves revealing forearms streaked with work and sun. He smiled politely, eyes flicking just once over her robe before settling on her face. "Mila?" he asked. She nodded. "The bathroom's upstairs. It's a small leak." He followed her without comment. Tool bag in hand, steps soft on the stairs. She didn't look back, but she felt the weight of being followed. Not fear, not discomfort, just awareness. As Mason knelt beside the vanity, Mila stood in the doorway. Steam from the running shower curled around her ankles. She leaned against the frame, watching him work. "Do you do this full time?" she asked. Her voice smooth, almost lazy. "Plumbing, yeah," he said. "Pays the bills. Must see a lot of houses. Most of them are colder than you'd expect." She smiled at that. A droplet from the shower slid down the tile with a sound that seemed louder than it should have. Mila turned toward the fogged mirror and began tracing circles in the condensation, pretending not to notice when Mason glanced up. Her robe loosened slightly, just slightly. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then she walked out of the bathroom, slowly, leaving the door ajar. Later, she would tell herself it was just hot, just a coincidence. But in that moment, the silence of the house had been broken by something else entirely. A heartbeat. A breath, a gaze held too long, and a door left open on purpose. She didn't know then what would come next, but something inside her had shifted, and it wasn't the plumbing. It was the feeling of being seen again. even if it was just through a curtain of steam. Mason arrived at exactly 10 a.m. Punctual, as promised. Mila heard the knock just as she was smoothing the steam off the bathroom mirror with her palm. The room smelled of eucalyptus and lavender, from oils she hadn't used in months until this morning. The shower still ran behind her, fogging the glass and warming the air. She wore the same silk robe, but today it clung to her damp skin. Not by accident. When she opened the door, Mason stood there in a dark t-shirt and utility jeans, his tool bag slung over one shoulder. His skin had the sheen of someone who worked in the sun. His eyes flicked across her form only for a second before he reset his gaze to professional neutrality. "Hey, Mason, plumbing," he said, unnecessarily. Mila smiled. "Come in, the bathroom's ready." As he walked in, she didn't lead him, she drifted, letting him follow the scent and the heat. When he reached the top of the stairs, she was already back inside the bathroom, wiping a spot from the sink with slow, circular motions. The mirror reflected both of them. He caught her eyes in the glass. "It's the vanity pipe, I think," she said. Mason crouched and slid under the sink, flashlight in one hand. "Shouldn't take long." Mila leaned against the counter, arms crossed gently beneath her chest. The steam made her skin glow. Her robe, already thin, had started to cling more tightly in patches. A few minutes passed in the sound of clicks, clanks, and Mason's muttered assessments. Then, Mila bent down to pick up a towel, but it slipped from her fingers. Fell, landed inches from where Mason lay under the sink. He paused. She didn't pick it up. When he pushed out from under the vanity, sitting upright again, his face was level with her knees. He looked up. Her legs were bare. Their eyes met. She didn't look away. He rose slowly, knees cracking slightly, tension rippling up his shoulders. Mila stepped back slightly, brushing the curtain as she moved. The shower still ran. The room was thick with heat and the sound of dripping water. "I think I got it fixed," he said, voice lower than before. Mila didn't answer right away. She walked toward the shower, reached in, and turned the dial slightly. More steam hissed out. Her back was to him. Then she said, "It's still leaking somewhere." He didn't ask where. She turned. The silk robe had slipped off one shoulder. Her eyes weren't asking, they were inviting. Mason stepped forward once, then again. The sound of the shower was suddenly louder than their breath. But only for a moment. Their kiss wasn't gentle, it was urgent, wet, and desperate, like a dam breaking after a long drought. His hands were rough, calloused from work. Hers were soft but shaking slightly. Not from fear, but anticipation. The heat in the room made everything more intense, their skin slick. Their clothes an inconvenience. They moved behind the curtain, the thin plastic pressing against their limbs as they found each other. The rod creaked, water splashed. Their whispers weren't words. For Mila, it wasn't love, it wasn't even lust, in its usual sense. It was validation, it was being desired without question. Mason pulled back once, breathless. "Are you sure? Don't talk," she said, voice steady. "Just stay." He obeyed. The curtain swayed gently behind them, barely hiding their shapes, barely covering the choices being made. Outside the bathroom, the house remained silent. Inside, everything else was loud. Afterward, they sat on the edge of the tub, dripping, breathing. Mila laughed softly. "You didn't expect that job, did you?" Mason ran a hand through his wet hair. "No, Mom, but I'm not complaining." She looked at him, the way his chest still heaved slightly. And for the first time in a long time, she felt full, not because she had broken the rules, but because for one stolen moment, she remembered she was alive. And sometimes, the steam doesn't just blur the mirror. It reveals what's been hidden all along. It was 2 days later when the crack in the story began to form, not from guilt, but from a lens. Tanya hadn't planned on stopping by. She was in the neighborhood, picking up a gift from a boutique nearby, and decided to surprise Mila. Friends did that sometimes. Tanya had always been the spontaneous one. She rang the bell and stepped back, already texting Mila to say she was at the door. but just as she lifted her phone to snap a playful selfie in front of Mila's house, the door opened, and out walked Mason. He had a slight smirk on his lips, his shirt damp at the collar, hair still tousled in a way that didn't look like work sweat. Tanya's finger froze on the screen. Mila appeared behind him, holding the doorframe, wearing what looked like a summer dress too sheer for midday. The robe clung to her frame. Her hair was damp, her lips flushed. Tanya smiled awkwardly. Mason gave a polite nod and brushed past. Mila's smile dropped the moment their eyes met. Tanya clicked the photo almost by instinct, the same way one captures a rainbow or a shadow moving in a strange way. She didn't know why, not then. "Hey, I was just around," Tanya said. Mila nodded, stepping aside. "Of course. Come in." He was just finishing up a leak. There was no mention of the steam or the curtain. They had tea. Mila changed clothes. Tanya kept the conversation light, but the image kept flickering in her head, the way Mason had walked out like he belonged there. The look Mila gave him, not just familiar, possessive. Later that evening, Tanya opened her phone to post a story. The image popped up in the auto gallery. It was blurry, but clear enough. Mila in the doorway, Mason within inches of her, her dress clinging, the smirk on his lips. She almost deleted it, but she didn't. A week later, Tanya went to a friend's rooftop party. Her phone was passed around to share playlists, take pictures. At some point, someone accessed the wrong album. By Monday, the image had leaked into a private Tampa neighborhood Facebook group, unfiltered and unspoken. By Tuesday, it had been screenshotted. By Thursday, it had made its way into the inbox of a man in Berlin. Mila's husband was in a conference meeting when he saw the message. The subject line simply read, "Your wife." He opened it. There was no text, just the image. He zoomed in. He didn't react at first, just stared. He recognized the dress. He had seen her wear it on one of their anniversary dinners. He remembered how proud she looked, how she said she bought it because it made her feel seen. Now she was seen, by someone else. His first instinct was not rage. It was calculation. He forwarded the image to a colleague in Tampa. Attached a single question. "Do you recognize this man?" The answer came less than an hour later. "Yeah, Mason Herrera, contractor. Did some work for me too." The husband leaned back, closed his laptop. A name, a face, a betrayal. But what hurt more was how easily it had unraveled. Not a grand scandal, not a confession, just a click, a flash, a friend. Mila didn't know, not yet. She was standing in her garden, watering the hibiscus, when her phone buzzed with a message from Tanya. "We need to talk." The sun was high, the steam was gone, but something colder began to rise in her chest. And in that moment, somewhere between the leaves and the breeze, Mila finally felt watched. The curtain had fallen, but the eyes had never left. The knock on the door came late. Not a slam, not a buzz, just the sound of someone who already had the key and decided to use it out of politeness. Mila opened the door, half expecting a delivery, her robe loose around her body, hair still damp from a long, distracted shower. But it wasn't a delivery. It was him. Her husband stood there, suitcase beside him, face unreadable. His eyes didn't roam, didn't accuse. They simply scanned her as if looking for something that had been lost long ago and might still be there, if barely. "Can I come in?" he asked. She stepped aside. The silence between them stretched like a hallway lined with closed doors. No kiss, no greeting, just steps across hardwood floors that sounded louder than they should have. He didn't ask about the robe, or the smell of lavender body oil that lingered in the air. He went straight to the living room, pulled out his phone, and connected it to the smart screen. A single image filled the display. Mila gasped, not out of surprise, out of confirmation. The picture. Mason leaving the house. Mila behind him, her dress damp, her skin flushed, captured not with malice, but by accident. The curtain didn't hide what you wanted it to hide, her husband said. His voice was quiet, almost too quiet. Mila stepped forward, then froze. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched her. It felt like being seen for the first time. She said, her voice cracking, not as a wife, not as property, just as me. That broke something, but not in him, in her. He nodded slowly, took a breath, then picked up his suitcase and walked back to the door. I've been gone 4 weeks at a time for years, he said, but today is the first time I don't want to come back. He paused at the door, looked back once, then left. No fight, no rage, just a closing door and the thickest silence she had ever felt. 3 days later, a lawyer called. 2 documents were delivered electronically. One was a divorce petition. The other was a motion to freeze joint accounts and begin asset separation. Mila sat in the same robe. The steam now long faded. The walls no longer held heat. The shower no longer ran. The house wasn't cold. She was. She opened the windows, hoping the air might carry the guilt out. But it stayed. She scrolled through her phone. No messages from Mason, no messages from Tanya, just silence. The image was everywhere now, in whispers, in glances, in group chats she'd never be invited to again. The woman who couldn't close the door. The wife who let a stranger in. The affair caught through sheer accident. But it wasn't an accident. It had started the moment she chose the sheer dress. The moment she let the curtain hang loose. The moment she smiled instead of gasped. Mila curled up on the couch, pulled a blanket around her, and stared at the now blank TV screen. Her reflection stared back. Steam had once clouded the mirrors, hid the flaws, made everything look soft and forgivable. Now, all she saw was smoke. Not from a fire she escaped, but from one she lit herself. She didn't sell the house. At first, she told herself it was because the market was down. But really, she couldn't bear the idea of someone else living in it, showering in it, looking through that same thin curtain. But after a few weeks, the silence got too loud. She moved into a small one-bedroom apartment downtown, where no one knew her name, no one whispered her story, and no one cared enough to ask. She used keys now, metal ones. They clicked and scraped. No fingerprints, no voice commands, just the grind of a lock you had to feel. There was no smart mirror in the bathroom, just a regular one, a little chipped at the corner. She didn't avoid it, but she didn't look into it either. The shower was smaller, the curtain was plastic, still new, still quiet. She never left it open. People still whispered, on forums, at clubs, on old threads where someone would dig up the meme again. Tampa's steam queen, one post had called her. Others weren't so kind. Mila never responded. Mason never called. He had quit his job, moved out of state, disconnected his number. Last she heard, he was doing plumbing in Colorado. Off the grid, no forwarding address. Sometimes she wondered if he had done it to erase her, or to erase himself from what had happened. Tanya never reached out, either. The phone was returned to her by some stranger. Too late. The damage was done. Mila didn't blame her, not really. She kept her days quiet. Groceries on Wednesdays, laundry on Sundays, cold dinners reheated twice. Then one night, the water stopped. It was a slow drip. At first, then nothing. She stood in the bathroom, faucet in hand, staring. She could have called someone. She didn't. She sat on the edge of the tub, barefoot, towel still around her waist, and stared at the plastic curtain. It swayed gently in the draft. The curtain was still there. So was the memory. The steam was gone, but the whispers had never left. She reached for the faucet again, hoping, maybe, it had just been air in the pipes. Nothing. She smiled to herself, a bitter, breathless kind of smile. Of course, she whispered, even the water's done with me. She stood, let the towel fall, walked back into the hallway without bothering to turn off the light. Behind her, the curtain fluttered once more. It didn't matter, the steam was gone, but the shadows still knew what happened there. Some curtains are too thin to hide the truth. Some steam never clears. Mila learned that silence can echo louder than screams, and that guilt leaves a residue even the hottest water can't wash away. But in Seattle, Isabel thought her walls were safe, her cameras off, and her secrets hidden. She didn't know her husband had wired the truth into every corner. And when the plumber came by, she offered more than just a drink. What happened next wasn't just betrayal. It was captured, in high definition. And it would cost her everything. Subscribe if you haven't already, because the next affair isn't just whispered about. It's recorded. And it's coming up next on Infidelity Chronicles.